All right. Good afternoon, Dan. We don't have a morning podcast today. You were out hunting elk this morning, so we made it work in the evening right before I take off, or afternoon, we'll say.
Yeah, that's right. That's right. Good. An afternoon podcast, kind of rare for us, I feel like.
It is. We're firing off all cylinders, so there was some good stuff in today's podcast. We talked about elk hunting like we always do, touched on mule deer, and then just giving it your all in areas and mindset. I thought there was some good stuff in there.
Yeah, a lot has happened in the last couple of weeks since we last met. More hunting and sheep hunting, adventure, and pushing ourselves to the limits. So it's been good. I am getting a little tired. I mean, season's winding down, so I'm excited to hunt deer. The best thing about hunting deer, they weigh less than elk. That's the best thing about hunting deer.
Yeah, I do like that you can get a deer out of anywhere. And as it gets to late season, I mean, I'm doing another backpack adventure here this weekend that we kind of talk about refining, your wood sense and backpacking, being a minimalist. And so we talked about that subject matter today. But I do like mule deer hunting too when you have a cooler and you have a steak at night. Boy, it sure is nice to eat right in these late season hunts.
Definitely, definitely. I was talking with my buddy. We were cow elk hunting yesterday, and killed a cow, and I was like, man, I mean, this is kind of the first cold weather. It's finally meat keeping weather. I mean, it's freezing at night, and that meat's getting nice and cold at night. So I'm excited for that too. I mean, it was a long summerish fall down here. Just bow season was in general where I've been hunting, so a lot of warm temps. So I would say that the below freezing nights are definitely a welcomed change for just the fact of keeping meat. Gotta get your meat cold.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, it does feel like hunting weather. It feels like
Yeah.
we're recording this now on Halloween, so November tomorrow. But yeah, it does feel like hunting weather for sure. So yeah, we'll get right into this podcast. We just want to thank a couple of our sponsors. So yeah, I want to thank Team Lodge. So Team Lodge, they make those campers that sit down. Gosh, they're just a next level camp for guys, especially as we're talking about these late season hunts, to be able to have a heated camp and just not much setup or pickup, and you just have an instant camp set up, man. It's so nice.
Yeah, the convenience factor, and we talked about a little bit of this in this podcast that you guys are, I think, will really enjoy of the logistics and time and convenience and moving throughout the country. But these Team Lodge trailers, and you have all your stuff in there that you need. You unhook them, set them down, camps up. There's really not much to them, and they're based off of the trailers that you see in the Midwest and back east with these ice fishing trailers that they sit right down on the ice and they have holes in the floor and you go ice fishing, so you're like comfortable out there all week if you want to spend all week out on a frozen lake. But they've kind of integrated these into fitting Western hunting lifestyle with, you're able to haul your side by side dirt bikes, mountain bikes, whatever, like they're a toy hauler, but they're set up inside with bunks in the kitchen and everything that it just makes sense. And they're not cheap. That's one thing, like with campers that you find, like everything's so cheap, I feel like. And these things are like they're like bomb-proof containers on wheels. Like you set them on the ground and they do not move, they do not rock in the wind, you do not hear any noise, and they stay incredibly warm. They're so much more insulated than like a normal trailer. You're setting them on the ground, there's no airflow underneath the trailer, so you have all these benefits. And it's a small company. And I was talking to a buddy the other day. I don't want to get on too much of a rabbit trail, but small companies are so awesome to work with because customer service is so good. So yeah, check out Team Lodge. Just a great product. I used it again this year on my elk hunt in Montana as a base camp. And when that rain came down, we got over 5 inches of rain in 14 hours. It was sure handy to be in that Team Lodge for the day.
Oh man, yeah, I would say, yeah, and just great guys. They told us personally, so let them know that you heard of it on the podcast, Eastman's Bow Hunting Journal, and you'll get he'll buy you a rifle or bow of your choice as well. So make sure you heard it here on the podcast or you mentioned that, and yeah, thanks to those guys for their support of the podcast. So I also want to thank Everly Stock. So we've been with Everly Stock for quite a few years now. So they just build durable packs that pack the weight right. They have a bunch of different models to fit your preferences, all the way from day packing to expedition style trips. So yeah, we Dan and I both like this new free fall. We've been using that for day hunts, and then I can even get a couple days of stuff in there, a quick overnighter, and then definitely packed way more meat than that thing's supposed to pack, as I use it as a day pack, but when I kill an elk, I can take a load out, which is really nice. So I really like that pack. You use their mainframe, Dan, with you use the Vapor Series bag, or you got another bag you're using for that?
Yeah, they had a bunch of attachments that they've built for them, designed for them over the years, and that's the cool thing about the mainframe is it's so modular. You can zip about anything on there that you want. But I really do like the Vapor series. They have the 2500 and the 5000, and I probably use the 2500 and the 5000 just as much. 5000 for backcountry hunts when I'm packing in, and the 2500 for a day pack when I'm elk hunting. And so on the mainframe, and man, the mainframe, I mean, it's designed to carry heavy weight. It's very simple. It does really well packing elk quarters, bone in, and head and cape. It's fantastic. So I love that, and I like the free fall for. I was going to say maybe the easier hunts, but the free fall for day hunting, maybe deer. It depends on the situation, but I mean, between those two packs, those two basically meet all my needs, from whether I'm hunting axis deer in Hawaii to red stag in New Zealand to, elk here in the States and moose. So, yeah, great equipment. We've used them for a long time. And I'm still running. The only reason I get a new mainframe is because it's soaked with so much blood and it's unsightly for camera. So like, hey, I need another mainframe. This one's getting a little dirty and stinky.
Yeah, yeah, they definitely work really good for pack outs. I always have that thing in my truck for pack outs, and then I do like the Destroyer for expedition style packs, and then I have a Kite 4800 that I like as well that I'll use for extended trips. So yeah, just a bunch of different models. Check them out. They're getting that weight of those packs is fairly light as well, durable, and then hold up to all the abuse that we give them. So yeah, thanks to Everly Stock for their support of the podcast.
Yep, great stuff.
And with that, we had that new late season deer hunt, archery deer hunt came out. So yeah, that was a good film. Really proud of that one. And gosh, some great films this season. Loved your elk film earlier, Dan. So if you haven't checked out Eastman's Beyond the Grid on YouTube, make sure to check it out, the new season, and then can't wait to see what we come up with next year. But we have some new episodes launching, don't we, Dan?
Yeah, we got a whitetail hunt coming up of mine, hunting whitetails on the ground in the Midwest. It was awesome. I get fired up just thinking about it. It was about a year ago, hunting out there with the Team Lodge boys of all people in the Midwest. But it was so much fun, and I shot this buck at 11 yards frontal. It was unbelievable. Great experience. And it kind of just harnesses why I love bow hunting so much on the ground with these whitetails. So just a great episode there. And then we are going to release Luke's sheep hunt coming up here at Christmas. So kind of episode of the season, a new one from this year, just a great adventure. We're going to get editing on that ASAP. So definitely some great adventures coming up as we wind down our 8th season. So pretty cool stuff.
Yeah, it's super cool. So check out that. Check out the other podcasts that we have, the magazines, Eastman's Bow Hunting Journal, Eastman's Hunting Journal. I've had some guys reaching out about the Mule Deer or the Deer Collective, and also the Elk Collective. Do we have a promo code going for that right now, Dan?
Yeah. Both those courses, save 50, and that'll give you 50% off both courses. Now's the time. Things are fresh in your head. And I was talking to Todd, my coworker, the other day, and he was on this elk stock, and he blew it, and he's like, what did I do wrong? And so, we had a good discussion. But now's the time when it's fresh in your head of maybe some shortfalls that you encountered when you're hunting this year, and what you can do to correct those in the future. And so, it's just a great time of the year to hop on those courses and just drive some things home, in that toolbox mentally for next year. so you can push forward and be successful next year for anybody that maybe was stumped a little bit. I mean, I didn't shoot a bull in Wyoming this year. It happens. So, sometimes you go home empty, but there's always room to learn and there's always room to get better. So yeah, check both courses out, save 50. That'll get you 50% off. So a little promo that I got going right now. So check those out.
Yeah, and we talked about it in today's podcast that the better your hunting skill set, the better your chance of success, and knowledge is a huge pillar to that. And knowledge, to be able to cut your learning curve by years, or to be able to gain years of knowledge through one internet course, it's definitely worth its weight in gold, or at least worth the price that we have it for. So yeah, check that out, and everything that we're doing at Eastmans. And man, it's a good podcast. Let's get into it, Dan.
Sounds good. Let's do it. Yeah.
Yeah. Good. How's the hunt this morning? You guys find anything?
Yeah. We split up. Lindsay has a tag and we split up, and she got on some bulls, found them. And I guess she was waiting for like an hour for them to stand up, and they smelled her and took off. So no success, but last day for her. So I think she's kind of bummed.
Oh, that is a bummer. Yeah, it sounds like she gave it her all. Yeah, that's it's tough when they don't give you the shot.
Yeah. I think she was just kind of waiting, and the wind got them. But yeah, oops. What do you do?
Yeah, it's elk hunting.
Yep.
Yeah. Well, good. Good to connect with you. Thanks for making this work on a hunting day.
Yeah, for sure. No worries. Sorry, I didn't really know my plan today, but we got her back, so we're back in town.
Okay, good deal. Yeah. I'm just throwing stuff together and stuff in the truck and trying to get out of here. It's always a mad scramble, So yeah, just appreciate you being able to jump on.
Yeah, for sure. You're headed mule deer hunting in Montana, right?
Yep, I am.
Nice.
Yeah,
cool.
I've got a new spot I'm going to, so pretty stoked. I've not that I've been stuck in a rut. I've had some really good areas that have been really good to me throughout the years, and I know I can go find bucks there. But yeah, just searching for, like a, I don't know, looking for that magic place, I guess. It's like trying to find, some big older age class animals, and just be fun to hunt a new spot. So yeah, super stoked for it.
Heck yeah, that's gonna be fun. Sweet.
Mm-hmm. Yep. So yeah, we'll load up. Try not to forget anything. It seems like I'm always scrambling. We talk about running by the seat of our pants. I thought I had all week to get ready, but I just been so busy trying to get other things done. So here I am throwing it all in the truck, and then I'm gonna backpack into an area. So trying to load up the backpack too, and don't know where I'm going to get water. So, I'm pretty heavy with water. I'm about 40 pounds. I just stepped on the scale, but I think I've got like 8 pounds of water in there. So, once I start drinking, I'll get lighter as I go.
Right. Yeah. You factor out that water. 32 pounds. That's not bad. That's good.
Yeah. 32 pounds for a 3-day rip. That's scope and tripod too for mule deer. So yeah, it's pretty light, really.
Nice. Yeah. That's good. Don't you hate that? It's just not that you hate it, but it's just part of a new area, right? You have to pack water because you just don't know if you haven't been in there and scouting.
Yep, and that's it.
Yeah, just the way it goes.
Gosh, it makes it really tough, doesn't it? I know elk season in another state, I was headed in to this area I wanted to go into, but I just didn't know where the water sat. And so, it was like I weighed taking 10 pounds of water in this way or the other way. I know where there's water, and I know there's water above 9,000 feet. And so I'm sitting there at the trailhead. I'm like, I'm almost smarter to drive to the other side, hike more miles, but I don't have to have that 10 pounds of water because I know where to get it. So, that knowledge of an area is huge when you're going in there and hunting.
Man, it's so important. And when it reminds me of a couple of weeks ago, we had this issue. Well, not a couple of weeks ago, but I guess maybe 10 days ago, a week ago. I don't know. It's all been a blur. But on Luke's sheep hunt. So get this. It's the same logistical issue. So I got intel on this ram in this basin, and you have a main creek drainage that gets you up in there, but then you got to kind of run this knife ridge for 1.2 miles. And it's at the top of the world. It's high stuff, and it's, jagged stuff. So that's one option. But I know, my buddy had been in there, and it's a good trail. And then looking at the map, you got another direction that you can come in from, but there's no established trail. So I start calling around to some of my buddies that are like, you know, they're mule guys. That's what they do. They run with their mules. And so I'm trying to find out if there's a trail up this bottom. And I've never been there before. And there's a storm coming, so you probably have one day to do it, and it's a horse thing. So we're going to go rent a couple horses and ride them up in there, because it's just, I mean, it's 6 miles and it's up there. And so, yeah, anyway, horse thing. So here's the dilemma. And this is one of my rules. And I was talking to Ike about this the other day, and I guess I live by this, and it's a big part of hunting smart and hunting efficient, like we talk so much about. But at all costs, I will avoid going into an area if I've never been in there or I don't have any intel. Like I can't assume that I'm going to be able to go in there and make good time or make realistic time to day hunt a spot, because we're day hunting the spot. So every hour is precious, especially as we get later in the season. The days are short. I mean, it's pitch black by 6:45, 7 o'clock. So I took a gamble, and we went this other route because I did get some intel that, that there's a trail there. And, this guy had hunted it 5-6 years ago. And he was telling me that, you go for the first 2.5 miles and the trail's good. After the second creek crossing, the trail's okay. You go through a bunch of this green timber and blowdown, and the trail's okay. And, you're looking at aerial imagery, you're looking at the satellite, and you're trying to picture what it would be like up there. And it looks fairly open, old growth timber. And so, you've been into that country enough, or that area, that you can probably get a feel for what it's going to be like when you're in there. You still never know. I mean, aerial imagery and e-scouting only gives you so much, right? You only have so much that you can really count on. So we ride in there, and his intel was good. I mean, the first couple miles, the trail's fine. It's an easy horse trail. Cross at Second Creek, and then you got like another half mile, and then I lost the trail. And then there's this big washout, and then on top of that, we had 4 inches of snow. And so when you have that ground cover with snow, when you're looking for a faint trail, it's so difficult, whether there's tread, like, the old trail mark in the trail, which that was kind of petering out. So now all you have for reference to find this old trail up through this timber is cut logs, right? That's what you have. You look for cut logs, and that gives you a clue to where the trail is. So we get up there, it's 1 o'clock, and now we can't find the trail, and we're on a time crunch, and we have 1.6 miles left to climb up another 1,000 feet from about 9,000 to 10,2. And so instead of, burning time trying to weave horses through, I mean, it's thick. And I did, like, the first thing I did was I did about 150-yard sweep around through the timber to try to find the trail so I could get the horses on it. I came back unsuccessful on that. So I was like, Luke, you know what? We're going to tie these horses up, and we're going to charge up this mountain and just walk it. It's only 1.5 miles. We can do this. And he's like, okay. So we start busting up through the timber and getting around the deadfall, and we're picking our way through on foot. It's not a big deal, but with dragging horses through this stuff, it would not be fun. But we get about 500 yards in, and we find the trail, right? Because it's pinching down. And so you're like, crap, do I go back and get the horses, or do we just keep charging? And so, yeah, we keep charging, right? Because we're once again on a time crunch. We don't have time to mess with horses. So long story short, we get up to the saddle at 2:30. So it wasn't bad. We climbed up there. We shot the ram by 3 photos, everything. We started hiking back out at 4:30. We made it back to the horses at 7:30. We walked out in the dark. So it worked, right? Everybody's happy. It was a long day, and it worked. But case in point is that sometimes scenarios like this, and this is why I have this rule, you can end up wasting a day or wasting a hunting day, fumbling around up there if you haven't been in there. So the point of this story is knowledge is power, And sometimes having, a well-known, like a Forest Service trail that, is good, is valuable to get you the mileage in that you need to get, so you have a chance to make something happen on an animal. So that's huge value. And on the other side, you can take a risk and go into an area, but you might be screwed because of just the logistics of fumbling around, finding a trail and getting it. I mean, we may not have even made it in there if we tried to get horses in there. And so, logistically speaking, I always try, especially going into an area, if I am day hunting it or I'm on a time crunch or I have a specific plan, to either go in there in the summer and see the trail with my own two eyes, or, you know, just make sure that I have excellent intel or it's a well-known trail before I go in there. So logistically, hunting is so much more than just finding an animal and killing it. It's the resourcefulness, and this is the stuff that I think, gets us excited, and the art behind it of, moving wisely in the mountains, and packing your pack accordingly, and the water issue. And so, yeah, I I test these rules that I have every year, and sometimes I don't even, I have, it's a black and white decision. Yes, I'm going to do this. No, I'm not. And sometimes it pays off, and sometimes it doesn't. But you got to be willing to, realize that like, okay, if I'm going to go into this unknown area and I don't know what the trail's like, be prepared to spend a little bit more time and a little bit more hassle, getting in and out. I mean, we didn't get back to the trailhead till 9:30. So, ideally, we'd be back. If we had a good trail, we would have been back by dark. But that's just the way it is. That's mountain hunting, and having the courage to do it and not being afraid, and having the gear that allows you to do that and walk in the dark for 3 hours or whatever, if you find yourself in that sort of situation. So anyway, I could go on forever about that,
Yeah.
but it's
No,
good stuff, right?
oh
It
yeah.
hits home. It hits home with,
Yeah.
why I plan and make the moves in the mountains that I do logistically.
Yeah, absolutely, man. I was so glad to see you help Luke out and help get that ram. It's such a once in a lifetime opportunity. But man, he's been going hard.
Yeah.
Had a guide there for a while, and I haven't got the whole story from Luke yet. But how solid of you to team up with him and then go up there and then shot a heck of a nice ram, man. That thing's beautiful. Had to be really cool to be a part of.
Yeah, sheep hunting. I mean, sheep hunting is sheep hunting. Yeah, I'll probably never draw a tag. I really enjoy it. Being from Montana, I think you can probably relate to, down here in Wyoming, the quality, or the size. I shouldn't say quality. The size of sheep down here are so much smaller than like the Missouri Breaks or some of the areas that we have in Montana that just produce these world class rams. And so it's fun to run these mountains down here. I've done a couple of them down here. It's very rugged. It's raw sheep hunting. You're looking for a mature for full curl ram. You're not worried about score on these tags. And this particular unit, it butts up against the park, and a, a lot of it is relying on weather. These rams, they do move out of the park based on, the winter weather. And then of course, as we get closer to the rut, they kind of have an area where they like to rut. But man, I mean, they struggled early. I mean, it's a 2-month season. You have September and October. Halloween, you're done. I mean, today's the last day. And the sheep rut doesn't really start until November. So it's kind of tough season dates. As in Montana, you have all of November to hunt a sheep when you draw a tag, and you're kind of spoiled because you have the rut to work with, and they're just so susceptible to hunters, of course. But it's unforgiving country. This stuff's so rugged. It's where I elk hunt too. It's in the same type of country, but just unforgiving. You have to be so calculated, or I mean, you get hurt, or just it's not going to work out. And I think that was, dang, I think that was Luke's like 14th or 15th day of hunting, which is a long time, but in the grand scheme of things, it's not, for a sheep hunt in some of these areas down here, because it's just so vast. But ultimate adventure, and man, I mean, we got out, we packed that sheep out on our backs, up out of the hole, and then the 1.5 miles back down to the horses. So it's, packs are heavy, but it's in reality, it's just a little jaunt, right? It's not that far. So it was just the right amount of distance and just the right amount of ruggedness. And it was fun to see Luke's face. He's after, he's never hunted a hunt like this where it's been this challenging, and it's taken this much out of him. And so I was joking with my buddy. I was like, "Yeah, Luke killed a ram today. Today's the day that he became a man. He went from a boy to a man after a sheep hunt, because this hunt, yeah, it chewed him up and spit him out for sure."
Yeah. Yeah, they'll do that. Those tough hunts for sure, especially those tough mountain hunts like that. They just take everything from you, physically and mentally. And so, yeah, no, that was awesome. Well, yeah, good on you helping them out. But yeah, you're right. The logistics, it is an art, like of being able to hunt these mountain hunts or hunt any hunt, just the logistics alone. And like you say, like trail work just makes it so much easier. And of course it adds like a different level of complexity with horses and downfall where, on foot you can always get through things, but it is amazing like how fast you can move on a trail and how slow you are off trail. And like that, big high country mule deer hunt that I had, there was a stalk on a buck where I had to move along the backside of the mountain, like kind of side hill over for a couple miles, and just the steepest, loosest terrain. And, it took me 2 hours to get around this buck, and 2 hours to expect a buck to still be in the same spot is a whim and a prayer almost. They're always going to change beds at that point. So then you're just like coming up over the top looking for them again. But on a trail, like, we had double-digit miles out of there, once I shot a buck or arrowed a buck. And it was like nothing, man. It was like, we had to make it down to the trail first off. That was like the toughest part. But then once we hit that trail, you just cruise on autopilot, then those miles just click off easy. And trails have a way that they kind of ramp you in and out of country. It's almost like we used to joke, it's like a handicap ramp, it just like has the right grade on it and you can just keep your feet moving. But yeah, navigating through that stuff, anytime you're going off trail or you're going to make a climb, like even navigating in the mountains in ridge lines, and then how you walk through timber, or if you walk down in the bottoms, and you're using like all your experience from years of hiking around, but then experience in that country, like you're saying, like transposing information that, like, I don't want to go down to the creek. It's really thick down there and steep, and there'll be cliffs, and like I want to avoid that at all costs. Where some places you take the creek bottom because there's a trail in there, or you'll find a game trail going down through there. But yet being able to navigate through country is just huge. And I know elk hunting and all of that, like the way you get in and out of country, you can double your time getting in and out of country just by the route you choose or by staying on trail or off trail. And I always, when I'm putting on miles, I try to stay on a trail. And then it surprises me, like as I'm free navigating through country, you kind of have this feel of the easiest route through country. And I'm surprised, like I'll hike that section again years later, maybe a couple days later, and it's amazing. I walk by the same trees and almost take the same route through country as I'm navigating through to kind of find the path of least resistance. But that's huge. If you ever stick a new hunter in front to navigate or lead, you're like, why in the heck are we walking this way? It's like, here, let me get in front here. Let me lead us to this ridge line or to this spot we got to get to, just because it's so many years, so much time in the mountains. But that navigating is huge. And I still make mistakes, or sometimes there is no good way. You're just choosing you're choosing the path that's the least bad, or the best of worst choices, or whatever the case is. But navigating's huge, man.
Yeah, it really is. And it's funny too, because I'll find myself, well, at an early age, as you're hiking into a country, especially if it's new country or off trail or whatever, you're looking at reference points. You're looking at, a snag or something as you go along these reference points. So when you are hiking back out, maybe your phone died or whatever, and it's so easy. Like, it's silly nowadays with our phones and Onyx and tracking and whatnot. Like, when I first started hunting, there was none of that. I didn't even have a GPS. And so, if you understand topography and navigation, or if you're hunting a creek drainage, depending on where you leave the creek from, it's like, yeah, okay, if I get lost somewhere, all I got to do is follow the drainage out. I'm going to make it back to the road or whatever. But like, of all the years of navigating the mountains, it's almost automatic. And when I go in, and this is where it's a problem, I'll get to it here in a second, but when I navigate in somewhere, I'll just subconsciously build these reference points. And then on my way out, if I happen to be coming out the same way, like I'll end up walking out my exact tracks when I come back out to the truck or whatever, unintentionally. Like I'm just wired that way, and without looking at the phone or anything, but unintentionally, just because maybe it's just a creature habit thing or whatever. But where it gets me is when I'm shed hunting, because I don't want to walk my same tracks back, or when I make a loop, because that's going to not be productive. I want to find horn. I want to always be making new tracks. And so like, it's actually harder for me when I'm shed hunting. I have to get on onX and make sure I'm covering a ridge or whatever, with good coverage, and I'm doing a good grid on a hillside, because for whatever reason, I'm just programmed to follow my tracks back or get back on the same trail. It's just weird, but I think it's just all those years of navigating in the backcountry without a phone and being like, okay, I'm hunting this flat country and it's easy to get lost in here or whatever. I have no reference points. So I need to really pay attention to my surroundings so I can get back to the truck or not get lost. And, you're always on hunts like that every year, it seems like, to some degree. But it's just funny how we're wired, as the years go by of doing this with our internal compass as well.
Yep. No, absolutely. Well, and you get pretty good at nighttime navigation as well. It always seems like it takes longer in the dark. I don't know if that's, you just don't have anything visually to look at. You're just staring at the trail. It always seems like even the same track just takes me longer in the dark, but you get really good at night navigation too, getting yourself to points and getting where you need to be. And then the logistics of it, like it's almost second nature for you and I, for water and for camp and for, to and from camp and being able to navigate around the mountains. But those logistics in wood sense, you have to build those skills and that comfort level, as well. As we spend so much time in the mountains, like we get really comfortable in the mountains, and it seems normal for us and to sleep in grizzly bear country or to sleep in country. We get really comfortable with it. But I remember that primal fear, like when I was in my younger years, and not that the wilderness can't still test me or make me nervous at times or whatever the case is, but there's just such a comfort level that I can really put all my effort and focus on the hunt, more so than like, I still have to keep myself safe. I still have to think about those things, but I just don't have to spend as much time and energy on them. That's just an automatic for me. And I spend all my time and effort trying to find that buck or trying to find that bull or cover country, which I think is really advantageous as well.
That's probably right there, Brian. Of all the things we've ever talked about, what advantage in the mountains, it's probably that. Like you're not thinking about all these other things. You're not thinking about thriving in the backcountry. That comes naturally. So you're thinking about, just hunting and just about strategy and positioning. And so that's huge. That's huge. And I think that just comes with time and as you said, comfort with doing it for so long. And not comfort like, you're getting, too cocky or you're too comfortable out there and you're not paying attention to things. It's just like, you're programmed that way. You know the drill, you have the process in your mind, you just done it so much. So like thriving in the backcountry is second nature. Living in the backcountry is second nature. And so you focus all your energy on hunting. I think that's so big. That's probably one of the biggest things that, a hunter can focus on and get on their side, is just getting that comfortable in the backcountry.
Yeah, well, and I know, like, I'm such a minimalist. I just I've had comfortable camps, I've had warm camps, I've had good camaraderie, and I like all that stuff for sure. But I'm there to find a buck and try to kill a buck, and I want to keep mobile, and I'm moving a lot. And so, like on social media, there was just a post about my wintertime camp about throwing this canvas down and double mattresses and double sleeping bags. And I'm just cold camping out there and then throw all my stuff in the truck and I'm in. And same thing this weekend. It's like pretty nice weather. It's like I could take 6 pounds and take a teepee and a stove, but I'm going to have to set it up. I'm going to have to pick it up every day. I'm going to have to gather firewood. And it's just like, I just don't need that. I'm just taking my bivy sack. I'm just going to sleep in the dirt. I'll throw it in my backpack in the morning and I'll be to a new spot. All my effort is to try to find a mature buck and kill a mature buck. And everybody has their different reasons. And I'm not saying don't have a comfortable camp. I've just come to the point where I love the hunt so much, or I just want to put all my effort into the hunt. It's like, I'll have a comfy camp again at some point in life, or down the road on a hunt, or when I need it, when it's super bitter cold. But for this weekend, it's a 3-day rip. It's like, oh, I'm bivy sack, sleep in the dirt, throw that stuff in my pack, and I'm gone to try to find the next buck as soon as daylight hits, or an hour before daylight. But yeah, I just get really comfortable where I just don't need like a thin layer of fabric between me and the woods to feel like I'm safe, or I don't need a fire to jump in my sleeping bag and get asleep for a night when it's, going to be, 20 degrees out. It's fine. I'll just hop in there, grab some sleep, and be ready to go the next morning. So I don't know. I kind of run bare minimal, and it's not for everybody, but it sure works for me.
Yeah, it's a comfort thing, right? Like what's comfortable for Brian, what's comfortable for me, and then other guys. And based on your personality or what you find comfortable is probably going to also determine how successful you are, how mobile you are, how good of a hunter you are, and all these other things. And so yeah, if you can find comfort with a little bit less than maybe what you normally would when you're backcountry hunting or just hunting in general, yeah, it makes sense. Your success is going to reflect that.
Yep. Well, and then you're dialed on all your clothing, all your gear, all your layers. Like I know exactly what to bring. It's been 20 years of hunting late season mule deer. Like I've done it so much that, I've got my layering system down. I know what I need during a snowstorm or windstorm, or when it gets cold, or when I'm on the vantage, or, I know I've got my little, my puffy booties that I'll stick on my feet inside my tent so my feet don't get cold at night. Like I've just got all that stuff dialed and packed away and ready to rip. But you kind of learn like what you need and what you don't. And when you're a backpacker, when you're packing extra weight, like I get home and take apart my backpack and go, well, I didn't use that, or I didn't need that. One of the examples was on that early season high country hunt. I did bring a set of 15s of the image stabilizers that I packed in my pack, and that's dang near 2 pounds of extra glass that I used, but I didn't need. It was like a scope, and my normal binos are fine, and I should have known that. But it's, this trip, there's no 15s with me. It's bare minimum. So when you're a backpacker, you kind of got to look through your gear and figure out what's most important. And for that matter, even a day hunter, gosh, those day packs get so heavy with gear and different stuff where, you need what you need, and you need to have enough to survive and stay warm and stay comfortable. But there too, you tear apart your day pack and you could probably lose 5 pounds out of that thing.
That's what I was thinking the other day, sheep hunting. I was like, this is ridiculous. This is way too heavy for a day hunt, to hike up this mountain to shoot a sheep for one day. And I think there's a fine line between being prepared and being, just taking what you need for the day. And, like I told Luke, I had the puffy pants and the puffy coat. And it's like, you know what? I mean, with a pair of puffy pants and puffy coat, if we get stranded out here, say we kill a ram at dark, not ideal for the horses to leave them down there tied up overnight, but we could be out here all night and we'd be fine. We got our puffy pants, we got our puffy coat, we each have a lighter, we can start a fire, we'd be fine. It's not ideal, but we're not going to die. And you factor some of these other things in, the spotting scope and tripod. And then of course, if you're filming your hunt, you have all this extra weight too with camera equipment. And I think it's just, the nature of the lives we live with filming our hunts. Our day packs are just going to be heavier than what they need to be, maybe. But yeah, I feel like there's always things to refine on a day pack or a backpacking pack, based on what type what type of hunt you're going on. Like all these hunts, backcountry hunt is the same as the next backcountry hunt, but they're not in regards to, how many days, how far you're going in, what species are you hunting, how picky are you going to be. Sometimes if I can leave my 85 millimeter spotting scope at the truck, that's 4.5 pounds, I'm going to do it. If I'm, hunting bull elk, maybe I'm going to leave it back at the truck, because with a good pair of binos, and if I'm not being picky, I can see what a good 6-point looks like, from a mile away. I know it's something to go after. But you get what I'm saying, though. I mean, every hunt's a little bit different, and it's just about making the best choice that you can possibly make at that given time. But that comes with experience too.
Yeah, no, I'm with you. And that's my biggest hurdle, or my biggest challenge, is like when to bring the scope and when not to. And I'm constantly like weighing my options of the country I'm hunting, how far I can see, what type of, am I looking for bucks or bulls? And like you say, hunting elk a lot, I'll ditch it. And now I've got the option that I can bring a pair of 16 or 20 image stabilizers and save a few pounds, so that's a good option to have. And I do take that option. But I still just love a scope. I like hunting mule deer. I love a scope, and I'm getting to the place where I don't need to kill. I don't just need to kill a buck. Like I'm looking for something I'm super psyched with. I mean, I always have been, but that level keeps kind of growing. Where God, I just want to take a good look at them, and I want to see mass, and and so I struggle with that. In hunting bears, it's like, well, I don't need a scope to see a bear, but I do to tell whether or not he's a jumbo or just like a decent medium. And maybe you can tell through binos, but that's my biggest challenge or struggle, is like whether or not to bring that stupid scope and tripod. I'm always battling that. So I've got it packed away for this weekend. I'll be looking over bucks and long distances and big country. And so, there's I'm definitely not second guessing that decision for this weekend, but I think based on the country, the animals you're hunting, and then the preference or your goal animal, what you want, I think there's a lot of times when you can leave that scope, like you're saying.
Definitely. And I find myself, filming. I love digiscoping, so I ended up just bringing the stupid spot and scope no matter what anyway, because for video, I throw the phone on the spotter. I mean, that's the best way to get, quality footage from your phone, is through that big old spotter. But it's like you said, it's heavy, but it ups your experience. It ups your ability to judge what you're looking at, depending on the species. But it's hard to leave that spotting scope for at home for me, especially if I'm filming. It's impossible.
Yeah, I know it. Well, and even elk, it's just nice to see them. And a lot of times, glass saves you miles, because you're able to dissect animals from a long ways instead of heading over for an animal with a decent frame that you don't really know what he is. And so, I think at times it does help you save miles, and you can see distances, and then whether or not to pay attention to a buck you see a long ways off, or whether to forget about him because he's not a shooter, and sometimes it is tough to tell depending on distance or terrain you're using, or some of those frames look pretty good on those things too, or the body type, or there's ways to tell, but it's just no way to get around like a scope. You just know right now whether it's a shooter or not a shooter, because you can zoom in that much.
Yeah. And it is nice too, looking back at footage at night, like looking for your target buck or whatever, and being like, okay, this is what he looks like, and he has this cheater here, or this is a defining feature on this buck. He's got a split ear. So and that can pay off if you're, in the zone, and you're close, and you got a bachelor group of bucks, and maybe you can't see his full rack, but you can see a scar on his face, or a split ear, or some other feature of that animal that distinguishes him from the others, so you don't make a mistake and shoot the wrong buck. I mean, you hear all these stories, right? I've heard it all. I mean, a buddy of mine here, he was hunting some bucks in western Wyoming, and bachelor group, and there was one good one in there, and then two mediocre bucks. But he didn't do his homework, and he didn't get any digiscope, and he didn't study them, and he was hunting them. He went in before season. This is rifle hunting, and so he had time, and he was watching them. But when it came down to it, it was low light, and his target buck fed out, and he shot, and the bucks kind of scattered and mixed up, and he thought he missed, and he ended up shooting again, but he shot 2 bucks.
Oh,
He killed 2 bucks because he didn't do his homework. He didn't, well, number one, target acquisition and knowing what you're doing. It's, it can happen. It can happen, but I feel like a situation like that can be avoided, and it would help if you had a little bit more time behind glass studying the buck that you're shooting, and being able to look at that footage on your phone, because that second buck he shot, he was able to see him, and he's like, I think that's the buck I just shot. I can see his frame. He looks similar, but he didn't take the time. And so, yeah, that can get you in trouble real quick. But yeah, being able to look at your target animal, that night in your tent because you got good digiscope on a quality spotting scope, it can be very important and definitely a game-changing feature to a hunt.
yeah. 100%, man. Yeah, it sure can. Well, and a scope allows you to pick apart shadows, like in bedding timber, like, middle of the day, if I'm backpacking or even if I'm not day hunting, like glassing those shadows can be really productive. And it's tough to like see those details through binos. And sometimes I pick them out bedded with binos, but a lot of times it's like dissecting that thing with a scope. Also glassing long distances. You think you can see deer a long ways off, 2 or 3 miles, and then you get the scope out and start picking it apart, and all of a sudden you start seeing deer way over there, and a direction to go. So yeah, it can benefit you in other ways too, besides the field judging. And then I feel like it's tough. We just went through opening day rifle season here, and I think it's just getting more difficult. I think there's a lot of factors that go into it, but I remember opening days and the first week or two just seeing bulls coming through town, and gosh, I just haven't seen much of that. And bow season hunting, I'm not seeing many dead bulls in camp, and I know guys are still getting them, and there's still opportunity out there, but man, I think it's tough out there. I think guys are getting more effective at hunting. They're more effective, at executing shots, at killing animals, more effective at e-scouting. They're putting more effort into it. And we need those numbers for hunting. But boy, I sure think it's getting more and more difficult out there to find success. And like around here for opening day at elk, I know we have good elk populations, and this place, they harvest a lot of bulls, and we could still get some weather, some gnarly snowstorms that push these bulls down, and I start seeing bulls come through town. But man, I just haven't seen many dead bulls for opening day. And I was just thinking about it today that it's opening day a rifle, and they've had a week now. I just haven't seen many bulls come through town. I think it's just getting tougher and tougher out there for sure.
Yeah, I was having a conversation with a warden yesterday. I was cow elk hunting with an old friend yesterday, and about this unit. And I've hunted this unit for 10 years, and I've seen the quality decline, the quality of bulls decline. And it's crazy in Western hunting. There's so many factors that, these units, they fluctuate, whether it's quality and herd size, of course, and just the quality of bulls are going down. And, some of it's been management, they're shooting more cow elk, but the number of bull tags has stayed the same. But what I think has changed is the seriousness of the hunter. I think guys are, the guys that are trophy hunting, the guys that are looking for that older age class animal, let's say that, the guys that are looking for those older animals. I think there's more of those guys out there now. And I believe in this particular unit, they're skimming that older age class off the top, and we're seeing the effects of that over the course of almost a decade, probably 6 years. And I think another factor too is this area has an outfitter, and this outfitter is very good at what he does, and he's doing the same thing. They're picking over and they're shooting the older bulls. And so yeah, this place is an elk factory, but you don't see the quality anymore. And I think Game and Fish could cut tags, and that would help too. But I think ultimately there's a lot of serious hunters out there, and guys that are starting to burn points, in these units. And that's probably another big factor too, is as these units point creep, it kind of ups the ante a little bit. These units take 12, 13, 14, 15 points to draw. I mean, you're not just going in there to shoot a bull. You want to find something nice, right? I mean, that's a long commitment. That's a big investment in points to hunt an elk. And so as these units point creep too, I think guys are getting more serious with it. But these units evolve and hunters evolve, and weather changes and predators and all these things, and that's why it's so important to be resourceful and flexible and start. Obviously, I need to start looking for other units that aren't hit as hard, or keep a closer eye on management practices by a game and fish department, with some of these practices, these management tools that they're implementing. Be able to look at those and be like, okay, based on what the state is doing in this unit, or what the tag allocations, this is set up for better trophy hunting, or older age class animals, and all these factors play into it. And we talk about that in the MRS section and on TagHub as well. But the ever changing conditions of Western hunting is hard to stay on top of. That's for sure.
Yeah. Yeah, I think you're spot on. Like, there's still good opportunity out there, and units are getting better and units are getting worse. And, it's definitely tough out there, but there's still opportunity. Like, you had a great season. I had a great season, all public land, do it yourself. Like, the opportunity is out there for sure. But there is more of an emphasis on trophy size and caliber. There's more guys that are training and going hard than there was even 10 years ago. Or I remember when I started looking for good 6-point bulls 15, 20 years ago, everybody thought I was crazy to even pass up a bull at that point, and there was some big bulls shot, but there wasn't the guys that were really focused on killing those big mature 6 points, or they weren't as proficient out there at it, and so I think you're right. I think there's still opportunity out there, and it's finding, the places that those older age class bulls and bucks can grow up. And, it's continuing to learn new locations and new spots and new units and taking chances. And, so yeah, I mean, I'm headed to a new spot this weekend that I'm super stoked. And not that I couldn't go back to some of my old haunts and go turn up a good buck and get an arrow in them, but I'm really excited at the prospect of checking out new areas and new locations. And maybe I find better genetics in the spot, or better age class, because of the management, because of, some of the things that they're doing, because of the trends in this unit. So yeah, I mean, I think that's the key, is there's still opportunity out there. You just have to be resourceful, and, you really have to work hard at it in today's day and age if you're going to turn up these older age class animals. So it's out there and it's available, but yeah, it's almost like a higher degree of difficulty nowadays for sure than it was, 10, 15, 20 years ago, which we all know that.
Yeah. Yeah. And so kind of going back to opening in Montana, how was the weather? I mean, especially up there, I mean, weather, snow, and elk hunting go hand in hand, but I mean, that can really affect that movement up there. How was the weather for opening weekend up there?
It wasn't hot, and we've had a little bit of snow, not enough to quite push them out of the high country, out of those hides and those that high country living for bulls. And so, yeah, I think that's a lot of it, is they're still up high. But, when they're up high, they're also all on public land too. They haven't come down to private. They're not on the edges. And so, I kind of like hunting it when it's like that, especially it wasn't 70, 80 degrees. It was cool temperatures, a little bit of snow up high, and see tracks. You can see elk feeding out. I think, I think these elk, like, it is a high pressure unit, and there's a lot of bulls that are harvested down here, bow and rifle season, and there's still a lot of elk down here. I just think they're getting smart too. Like, the elk, their number one predator, is humans. I mean, you could make an argument for wolves or grizzly bears or whatever else, but really surviving the hunting season is the biggest challenge to these bulls being able to grow up to 6, 7, 8, 9 years old. And I know these bulls are in the mountains. In fact, I've seen them this year scouting around. I didn't have a chance to hunt this unit myself, but I had buddies in the unit and then did some glassing for them. And there's still great bulls in this super high pressure unit. It's just difficult. And I have 20, 25 years of hunting this place. And so I've got a lot of working knowledge of where these bulls like to go and how they hide out. But they tighten up their program. They're crafty. They survive general rifle seasons with 16,000 non-residents, with all the residents. Everybody can come here and hunt. And these big bulls are surviving to get to that older age class. And it's really impressive. So they're learning how to survive the bow seasons. They're learning how to survive the rifle seasons. They have their places where they hide, and they know not to show themselves and make mistakes. They're a high pressure elk, which is dang near a different species. So there's still opportunity around here, and there's bulls around here, and we have decent weather, just not that gnarly snowstorm, bitter cold weather that holds them out a little bit longer, that makes them a little bit more susceptible to rifle hunters, But I don't have any qualms about the numbers of elk around here, or populations, or age class of bulls. Like, it's just, man, they are crafty and difficult to harvest down here, which I think is a good thing. There's still opportunity out there.
Yep. And I think you bring up just the nature of Montana's opener. I mean, it's kind of feast or famine, but right now, or this last 10 days of October, is arguably the hardest time to hunt a big mature bull, right? I mean, just post rut, before there's any, real weather that comes through, and they're hiding out. They're not traveling very far from bedding to feeding. So, if they have timber to work with, which any of those bulls that are mature, they know better to not come out into the open. And so they're, people would say they're basically nocturnal, but their program is just so small. It's so tight. And this time of year is the hardest time to find a big one. I wonder if, the general season in Montana or any of these states, if they shrunk it from like October 20th to November 5th, I wonder how many bulls would die. I bet not very many.
No, I think you're right. Yeah, they pretty tight programs that time of year. It really takes the weather around here, to really kick them out. But, the same elk hunting tactics hold true. Like, they tighten up their program, maybe feeding the edge of openings, really using timber, but they do come out. It is about grabbing master vantage points, and all those tactics that we talk about still hold true, and you can still find and kill elk here with the bow and with the rifle. But, yeah, things change year to year too. So, it's like, even with my working knowledge, every year is different. And so, I had buddies hunting places that I like to hunt this year, and helping them theorize and find elk. And they did find elk, but they also went to places, they almost got stuck in a rut, as well as this place had been so good the last time they were here. And then, I've killed a bull in there since. And so they just kept hammering this area, but the elk weren't in there, And so instead of branching out and finding new locations, which they eventually did, but, they were just stuck in this, these elk are going to show up. They're going to be in this drainage there. But every year, and the feed's different, and the pressure's different. And, I heard there were some wolves in there as well. That can sure shake things up, and so everything changes. You just got to go and find them. But it still holds true. Like, it's working on your hunting skill set. And the better you are at these skills, at finding animals, at stalking animals, at shooting animals, like finding animals in your e-scouting is such a huge part of it. Like, the key to killing elk is being into elk. So you can definitely go strike out. And even me, I'll strike out throughout a season, but I'm on to the next theory. I'm on to the next spot. I'm heat checking locations. Like, you have to be really good at finding elk, but the better your hunting skill set, it's just the better chance you have at notching that tag on a mature critter. And that just, it holds true for every place I hunt. It holds true for every unit I hunt, every season. The higher your hunting skill set, the better your chance at success.
Absolutely. And the heightened stuff, these heightened conditions like you're describing in these units is, they still work those edges, but are you staying out to last light? If you hear guys that are struggling, and, are you out there at last light? Are you watching these edges in these meadows at the first flicker? Like, you look through that spotting scope, and if you can see something, can you see that tan body over there? And some of those units, I mean, that's how hard it is. That's what you're describing. Yep. And otherwise you won't see them out in the open. And so I think as long as guys realize that, I think, like you say, you still can find success, but that might mean staying out there a little bit longer and maybe walking down in the dark in grizz country. I mean, are you comfortable with that? you got to decide if that's something that you're comfortable doing, because I know I've been there and I've stayed on vantages to the bitter end, because you just never know what could slip out at that last, 3-4 minutes of light that can be a game. It can change the flow and change the direction of the entire hunt based on a few minutes. And that's what's crazy about it is how little of a detail, how minor of a detail can be the difference between going home empty and, killing the biggest bull of your life. So, yeah, it's great points.
Yeah. Oh, it's so true. It's the little things, man. And
Yeah.
believing in where you're hunting, like not seeing animals is disheartening and you kind of feel like nothing's there. And I get there myself, a new area. I killed a good bull out of this year. I went in there for an evening vantage, just drove, halfway through the day, got there, made it in there for an evening hike way back into this place. And I'm sitting on a master vantage point and it's pretty quiet. I haven't heard anything. I haven't seen anything. It's a bunch of great elk features. And I find myself doubting the location as well. And it's like, well, all right, I can't make it to a new spot tonight. I just got to commit to this spot. I got to just sit here till dark and then we'll walk out of there. But honestly, I'd almost given up at that point that I'm going to see an elk. Like prime time had come, like the sun's setting, it's late. I haven't heard a bugle, haven't seen an elk. And almost in my mind, I know I have to sit there till last light, but in my mind, I'm almost starting to think of my next move for the next morning, for the next day. And then all of a sudden you hear a bugle and a great big 6-point pops out down below me, and then another satellite, and then ended up hunting that spot for, a couple days and killing a great bull out of there. And they were in there. They just had a tightened up program. It was fairly warm, but even myself, I start doubting, like you can put in like this half effort if you start to believe there's no animals there, or, you hike into a spot and you're just not looking as hard at every opening. You're almost like, it's so common to be in a spot and think the grass is greener somewhere else. You get in, you hike all the way into a spot and you think, gosh, I should really be over there in that other canyon, or gosh, I should have gone there tonight. Instead of like, you just focus on that area and go, I'm here right now. I'm here tonight. I'm going to see if there's any elk in here and I'm going to give it my all. Not only am I going to sit at this vantage point, but I'm going to hike way out this point and look in that back basin. Like just giving your all on every hunt, because it's amazing how quick things change. And all of a sudden you got a 6-point in your glass or a 4-point buck in your glass. And it's like, oh, I found him, and it's just because you gave that extra effort. You believed in that spot. So you hiked in there for a reason. Make sure you're giving it your all in every place you go. Even if there's nothing there, you have nothing to lose. So you don't see anything, but you were there till last light. You covered that country. Now you don't need to be there tomorrow. You can go to another spot instead of like half hunting it and hiking out early. And then, there could have been bulls that came out in that meadow. It could have been the biggest bull of your life that came out on one of those edges, but you didn't sit up there till dark to see him. So it's something, that I have to remind myself of as well. But it's so important to be present in the place that you're hunting and give it your all in the location that you've chosen for that morning hunt or that evening or that backpacking trip.
I think that's the most powerful stuff of this whole podcast today, because human nature, I see this all the time from guiding and hunting with friends and coworkers. You have a tendency to do exactly what you're saying. Is you're not seeing stuff and time's winding down and you're thinking of, the sun's going down and you're like, okay, what's for dinner tonight? Or man, I want to go crack a cold one back at camp or whatever. You see it all. But that's human nature, and you begin second guessing yourself, like you're saying, and fight that exactly what you're saying. Fight that and stay to the end and know that you gave it your all. I was talking to my cousin about it's just amazing. You can be your own worst enemy. And this example with my cousin is he was a catcher in college, baseball player. And he said he would work with some of the best pitchers. They had the meanest stuff, nastiest stuff that guys couldn't hit, but their head cases, they would get in their heads, in their own heads, and they would screw things up or make wrong decisions or just not able to produce that good stuff when it came down to crunch time, in a game. But he says he laughs because he's like, yeah, pitchers are head cases, man. He's like a pitcher, like they get in their own way and they overthink things and they screw it up. They might be super talented, but they screw it up. And so I think, you know, I've thought about that, and you can apply that to hunting, is don't overthink things. You've done your homework, you've put the time in, and believe in your tactics. And we preach that all the time. Believe in the process. And so that just hits home with me. I mean, that's great stuff, Brian, what you're saying. And I think even for me, an example, I'll get complacent sometimes too. If I'm say I'm guiding somewhere on a private ranch, and these elk, they act different, and maybe they stay out later in the morning, you know, feeding, and they go to bed, or they come out earlier in the evening, and they go to bed later in the morning. That's what I was trying to say. And it makes you complacent. And I joke about it because it's like, yeah, I go guide on these ranches. It makes you a worse hunter because you don't have to work as hard to find a big bull. But I think that's human nature. And so that's just a good reminder for me too, or wherever you're hunting in the world, or whatever species that you're hunting in the world, don't get complacent. Still go, you know, dark to dark if it makes sense, and believe in your process, and just don't waver from that. Being thorough, I think that's a big one too, kind of like what you illustrated. But that's great stuff, and I think, you know, that's so important to finding consistent success.
Yeah, man, it's such a huge part, and we all
Yeah.
kind of battle it. Even when you're experienced or kill good critters, it's like tough to keep your head in the game. And I found myself on that high country mule deer, like I had to make a really tough decision with, you know, a day or two left. And I had to leave a couple shooter bucks that I was after in this buck brush that I just couldn't get the better of. And, you know, I was close, and then they had just tightened up their program, and they just weren't lending themselves to a stalk or even where I could get into. And the buck brush was over my head. I spent, you know, a whole night 120 yards from a buck, and I just couldn't make a play. It's too noisy to get in there. They're not coming out of the buck brush. And so I had to make this really tough decision that I had to leave those bucks to go find bucks, which is one of my rules not to do, you know. But I just knew, like, a couple more days, I'm not going to kill a buck in here. They're just not making mistakes. It's too tight of a program. I'm not getting opportunities. They're not showing themselves. Like, I got to go find a buck that I haven't pressured or that hasn't been pressured. And so, you know, I had to pack up my camp and walk away and pack away from two great bucks that I would have loved to arrow. And I had to walk away. And during that hike, with that weight on my back, you know, I find myself with those head cases or playing those games going, God, I'm walking away from bucks. Should I really stay there and try to give it one more night or one more day? Maybe I'd kill one of those things if they make a mistake. And then I have to snap myself out of it and go, no, you played this game for a few days. You know these things are tight. You just got to go find another buck. You're packing into this saddle. Stay present. Keep glassing. And, you know, like, backpacked all the way into this area, and it's like late in the day, and I've got another plan to go in this back basin where I'd scouted a good buck I'd seen a long ways off 5 or 6 days ago, scouting before season, or 7 days prior, whatever the case is. But I got to the saddle where we're going to camp that night, and I start glassing around, looking around, and sure enough, I able to pick out a couple bedded bucks, you know, and then get a chance and able to arrow that buck on my first stalk. It was a great heavy 3 that was just a bomber buck that I was super happy with, but all because I made that real difficult decision. And then I had to snap myself out of that second guessing game of, like, if I'm making the right decision or not, like, just trusting your gut on those really tough decisions. It's not easy.
Yeah, that's probably the hardest choice to make on a hunt, what you're just describing right there. And in some of those situations, I've done it hunting elk too. Like, just based on the terrain and the movement and what these bulls are doing, or whatever the case may be, like, they can be hunt killers, time wasters. And maybe the wind is just, you can never get it in your favor in a spot. And so you just have to, like, know when to pull the pin and get out of there, and relocate, move to another spot, and kill a bull just like that, and not even set up your camp yet. I've been there, I've done that. And that's probably the hardest choice to make on a hunt. But once you've been in there and you've been on those time waster hunts that they just eat your days up, and you end up going home with nothing, just because it's a tough spot to hunt, and that their programs are so tight, like you're saying, that's a tough situation. But the only way to know when to pull up and get out of there is by getting burned from the pass. So I would say that's one of those things that experience definitely pays, but probably one of the tougher decisions that a bow hunter can make on a hunt.
Yeah. 100%. Yeah, well, good work, dude. It's been a heck of a season. You've continued your season right on through, helping buddies, helping Luke with that sheep, and just keep carrying on. So yeah, happy for you, man. You've had a heck of a season, and it just keeps going here through November. Time to get after these muleys a little bit. At least for me, I'm super stoked about that. So yeah, we'll just keep hunting and check in with you here in a couple weeks. Any closing thoughts, Dan?
Yeah, no, I can't wait. I have a Montana tag too. I'll be heading up there hunting mule deer next week, so I'm ready. I'm excited for deer. It's finally here. It's finally November, so I can't wait to get out there and let's bounce ideas off each other and what we're seeing out there in the next couple of weeks, because I'm excited to get back up there and hunt mule deer in Montana.
Yeah, awesome, man. It seems like a bit of an early rut, and I know that's weird to say, but I saw a 4-point yesterday or day before on my run that was with a group of does, and then he was gone when I came back by in the evening. But yeah, just my local knowledge and just hearing things here and there and whispers throughout the state that a lot of guys are seeing bucks with does here early, which, I always say like around late October, early November, they start staging, and you're not every buck is rutting, but like maybe out of 8 groups of does, one of those groups of does has a big mature buck with it, but it just seems like they're a little bit early. And then I really think the rut kicks off like 6th, 7th is when I just see it go nuclear. So I think your timing is going to be pretty good for sure.
Yep. That's what I'm banking on. I've seen the same thing in these mule deer that they're coming out. The bucks are with the does. Maybe not the biggest bucks yet, but it's starting for sure.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, 100%. Well, good on, man. Good hunting to you, and we'll keep in touch.
You too, buddy. Sounds good.
Okay.